Incredible act of kindness. 50 bikers surprised elderly woman who gave her last $10 to help. Marlene Linfield sat at her kitchen table, clutching her weathered purse, worn from years of use. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribcage. Today, she was down to her last $10, the weight of her impending bills pressing heavily on her like a lead blanket. Gazing out the window, she caught a glimpse of Lisa, the single mother 2 doors down, attempting to juggle a squirming toddler while wrestling with grocery bags. The sight tugged at her. What if she could help? A voice echoed in her mind, drowning in doubt, as if the ghosts of her late husband and children whispered their concerns. What if she gave away her last $10? It could mean skipping dinner tonight or turning down the heat for a few days, choices she was growing dreadfully accustomed to. Diving into that decision felt like opening the gates to a world where she might drown. But how could she turn away from Lisa, who looked so overwhelmed? The agony of choice clawed at her, and just as her resolve started to crumble, Marlene felt a pulse of determination surge through her veins. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Marlene made her decision. She clasped the $10 in her palm like a lifeline and waddled outside. As she approached Lisa, the child's giggles filled the air, but they instantly faded into a silence thick with tension. "Here, dear," Marlene said, her voice quivering. She handed over the bill, feeling its crisp edges slice through the air like a knife, and watched Lisa's eyes widen with gratitude. A flicker of warmth suffused Marlene's heart for a moment before it twisted into knots of anxiety, as the reality of her own situation washed over her like a cold wave. What was she doing? That $10 could have smoothed over her utility bill, maybe even bought a loaf of bread. The happiness she felt watching Lisa was finite, a brief burst of light in an increasingly dark tunnel. Every moment of joy was juxtaposed against her own spiraling debt. How would she cover next month's mortgage? Panic clawed at her throat, squeezing tightly until breathing became a labor. As the evening darkened, creeping shadows began to fill her home, mirroring the shadows brewing in her heart. The more she clung to her kindness, the more helplessness fluttered in the gut of her stomach. The whispers of her children returned, now infused with a sharper reproach. How could you? They seemed to question. Marlene closed her eyes tightly, but visions swirled before her: the empty cabinets, a padlocked mortgage, and fading memories of laughter. And then, like lightning, the idea struck her. She had given away her last dime. What if that act, which felt so righteous, spiraled into an act of desperation? What if Lisa couldn't find a job again, and Marlene's gift meant nothing in the long run? The tension coiled within her, tightening like a noose. She staggered back across the room into the embrace of silence, wondering and worrying, engulfed in an undying loop of regret. Was her life worthy of sharing, or was she just masking the dread that loomed ahead, leaving her stranded at the edge of hope, staring into uncertainty? Marlene awoke the next morning with a dull ache in her chest, remnants of the previous day's turmoil. The sunlight poured through her kitchen window, illuminating the empty chairs around the table, a stark reminder of the vibrant family gatherings that used to fill her home with laughter. With a heavy heart, she shuffled to the fridge, instinctively reaching for her last carton of eggs. Just as she cracked one open, the sound echoed in her mind, a stark reminder of choices made and consequences faced as she cooked. The smell of breakfast wafted through the air, drawing her thoughts back to Lisa and the toddler. Images of the young mother, desperate yet hopeful, invaded her mind like a persistent shadow. Was Marlene's choice yesterday truly an act of kindness, or was it a misguided attempt to escape her own plight? The tension within her coiled tighter, prompting her to act not out of desperation, but out of resolve. Today, you need to do something for yourself, she whispered to no one but her reflection, staring back from the polished surface of a kitchen cabinet. She decided it was time to rediscover the hidden aspects of herself buried under layers of self-doubt. After breakfast, a spark of ambition ignited within her as she rummaged through old boxes in her attic. At the back, dust-covered books and forgotten crafts emerged the remnants of hobbies long abandoned. One particular item caught her eye, a scrapbook filled with vibrant images and heartfelt letters. It was a collection of memories, capturing the love she had poured into crafting during her younger years. The nostalgia flooded in, teasing at skills she had set aside in her journey of survival. With renewed energy coursing through her, Marlene opened her laptop, unknowingly embarking on a journey of self-discovery. As she scrolled through social media, she observed how others shared their creative crafts, showcasing their ingenuity. Perhaps, she thought, I could sell my crafts online, find a way to contribute to my bills without sacrificing kindness. A glimmer of hope illuminated the shadows of guilt that had dwelled in her heart, but doubt lingered, like cobwebs refusing to budge. What if no one would buy her items? What if her creations were not good enough? Her hands trembled as she began selecting materials, a stack of colorful papers, beads, and an assortment of fabrics. Marlene realized these materials were not just remnants of yesterday. They represented the untapped creativity yearning for expression. With each stroke of the scissors and twist of string, she felt a sense of liberation. The act of creating was restoring not just the fragments of her artistry, but also rekindling the flicker of joy within. She became aware of how pressing the bills were against her ambitions, but she pushed past them. For the first time in years, she was not merely surviving. She was actively engaged in reclaiming her identity. Later that afternoon, a message pinged on her phone from Lisa. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much your help meant. Reading the words sparked an ache of warmth compounded with nervous tension. The internal conflict flared once more. Could she genuinely afford to help others while building her own nest egg? Spurred on by her growing resolve, Marlene made a plan. She would devote every afternoon to crafting and selling online, but she needed to dig deeper into herself. What more could she achieve? What greater dimensions of her potential lay untouched? As she took a deep breath, the urgency to contact Lisa bubbled within her. Maybe they could collaborate. Marlene's nerves fluttered, battling with excitement. Perhaps this was the moment that could nurture both of them. But even as inspiration fueled her optimism, a flicker of apprehension lingered, making her heart race. Could this fragile hope evolve into something more significant? Or would it remain just another fleeting dream at the edge of an uncertain horizon? She had to find out. And so, with a mixture of anticipation and dread, she hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keypad, ready to reach out, but unsure if she was ready for another leap into the unknown. Marlene's fingers hovered over the keyboard as unanswered questions pulsed in her mind. What if this is just another failure? The self-doubt had a familiar weight, but beneath it was a flicker of excitement, a willingness to break free from her shackles. With a deep breath, she forced herself to type out a message to Lisa. Hey, I've been thinking we could team up. I'd love to create some crafts together if you're interested. She hit send before she could talk herself out of it, feeling both liberated and terrified. While waiting anxiously for a response, the urgency of her crafting project pushed aside her worries. She gathered supplies, a mix of fabrics and paints, and created a small workspace on her kitchen table, transforming the emptiness into a canvas of colors and textures. Each stroke of her brush felt like an assertion of control, a rebellion against the inertia that had plagued her for too long. As the hours slipped by, her surroundings took on a vibrant sheen, the clutter of her once-forgotten passions slowly reconstructed. A tapestry of creativity blossomed, and with it came a whisper of self-belief. This could be more than just a hobby, she thought, envisioning her crafts capturing the attention of those searching for something unique, something heartfelt. The notification sound pulled her from her reverie. Lisa's response popped up on the screen. I love that. Let us meet tomorrow. Marlene's heart raced. The collaboration was an unexpected thread weaving into the fabric of her desires, encouraging her to forge connections she didn't realize she needed. As the evening settled, her mind wandered back to her family. The warmth of past gatherings made her heart ache, but there was no room for nostalgia now. She needed to ensure the future held promise, not just memories. The next morning, arriving with unexpected clarity, she began to plan for her first online sale. It was critical that her first impression resonate with potential buyers. She donned her jacket and ventured to the local craft store, determined to choose the best supplies she could afford. The bright lights and cheerful chatter of fellow shoppers invigorated her spirit. She was no longer just a woman in survival mode. She was a creator, and that sense of purpose enveloped her. After selecting vibrant threads and fresh canvases, Marlene poured herself into crafting with renewed vitality. Each piece she created was not just an article for sale, but a narrative of her journey, a testament to her resilience. The bills remained a reality, a persistent reminder, but they informed her intention rather than stifled it. Then came the moment when doubt crept back in. After finishing her first set of creations, she hesitated again. Would these items resonate with others? Would they understand the love and struggle woven into each stitch? A flicker of fear sparked in her chest, threatening to overshadow the excitement she'd constructed. Instead of collapsing under the weight of uncertainty, Marlene transformed that fear into a call to action. She created an account on an online marketplace, each click feeling like a small victory. With a trembling heart, she listed her items for sale. That moment, when she clicked publish, was monumental. It felt as if she was launching herself into uncharted waters. As she sat back, a wave of equal parts dread and exhilaration washed over her. What if no one noticed her creations? Would her efforts fall flat? But, in a powerful moment of reflection, she recalled Lisa's gratitude. The connection formed through shared struggle gave her courage. And then, a message pinged. It was from Lisa. Can we chat today? I wanted to go over some ideas. Anticipation flowed through Marlene, an echo of self-discovery ringing strong within her mind. This partnership could be just the catalyst she needed to expand her dreams, to legitimize her endeavors, and make a real impact. With her heart racing, Marlene thought, this could be the moment everything changes. The uncertainty of her new path lingered, but so did a surge of determination. The project she had once feared could become a testament to her growth. And so, as she prepared for the conversation with Lisa, a bold resolve settled over her. The time had come to weave her aspirations into reality. But would that reality hold a risk greater than the safety of her craft room? Would facing her fears also mean addressing both her past and her future in ways she hadn't yet imagined? As Marlene settled onto the couch, her pulse quickened with anticipation. The conversation with Lisa felt pivotal, a bridge leading from her isolated creativity into the bustling marketplace of ideas and collaboration. She took a moment to breathe deeply, steadying her nerves. The stakes were rising, and so was her confidence. When Lisa's face appeared on the video call, Marlene immediately sensed a spark of enthusiasm radiating from her friend. Lisa's infectious energy enveloped the screen, making it easier for Marlene to relax. "I'm so glad we're doing this," Lisa exclaimed, her eyes bright with possibility. "Let's brainstorm." Immediately, Marlene felt herself transitioning from solitary artist to a collaborative force. Ideas began to flow. Every suggestion from Lisa was a new canvas, and Marlene's previously muted palette became vivid with possibilities. They discussed launching a joint online store, merging their respective crafts into a cohesive brand. Marlene reveled in the aspect of teamwork she had long neglected, and it fueled her imagination. Yet, beneath the bubbling excitement lay the shadow of self-doubt. What if my creations don't measure up? She thought, a familiar anxiety wrapping around her mind like a tightening noose. She fought the impulse to voice her fears, instead directing her focus on strategy. Marlene proposed an online marketing plan that included social media engagement to showcase their products, and to her surprise, Lisa embraced it wholeheartedly. Let us create a launch video. We can show our process, how each piece is unique, Lisa said, her passion palpable. A seed of creativity sprouted in Marlene's mind. This was not just about selling, it was about storytelling, about breathing life into each item. Yes, and we can share a journey. People want to feel connected, especially right now. Marlene replied, a new determination edging into her voice. As they talked, Marlene began to visualize their dreams materializing, and with that visualization came a sharp pang of vulnerability. It wouldn't just be her crafts on display. It would be her story, her struggles, her triumphs. What if they were met with indifference instead of appreciation? Cold sweat tickled her palms as she wrestled with the fear of exposure, showing her inner world felt monumental. But Lisa's laughter broke through her spiraling thoughts. Have you ever thought about our craft as a form of therapy? It's like pouring your heart into every stitch, letting go of the past with each brushstroke. Marlene nodded, deeply touched by her friend's insight. It reminded her that magic happens when creativity meets authenticity. Perhaps this was her breakthrough, embracing imperfection as part of her narrative. Feeling bold, she suggested they host a live Q&A session once they launched. We'll invite people into our creative process, Marlene proposed excitedly. They can see us vulnerable just like them. This idea ignited a thrill of possibility. Leaving her comfort zone felt like jumping into a deep pool, but suddenly the coolness didn't seem as daunting. Instead, it felt like a chance to both inspire and connect. As their conversation drew to a close, a new goal began to take shape in Marlene's mind. She wanted to expand her network, seek others with similar aspirations, and learn from them. Collaboration was only the first step. Unleashing her voice was something entirely different. After they hung up, Marlene sat in the quiet of her living room and processed the excitement and fear swirling within her. The world outside her craft room had begun to grow larger, more impactful. Was she ready to step out into that world in a meaningful way? The thought stirred both exhilaration and apprehension. The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet each potential setback seemed like a stepping stone rather than a barrier. With each heartbeat echoing her growing resolve, she opened her laptop and began searching for crafting communities. I can learn, I can grow, I will face this, she assured herself, feeling her confidence solidify further. The risk of baring her soul to the world loomed large, igniting a primal fire of excitement. What awaited her beyond this new threshold? Would confronting her fears lead to something transcendent, or shake her newfound resolve? With a smirk of determination, Marlene dove into her search, eager for new connections and lessons that could redefine her perspective. The moment of truth was approaching, and she could already feel it in her bones. Life was about to offer her a chance to confront her deepest fears. But was she prepared for whatever awaited her? Marlene spent the next few days navigating her newfound aspirations, immersing herself in online crafting communities. Each click of her mouse was a step deeper into a world she had only peeked into before. The vastness of the internet comforted her and made her dizzy at the same time. The sheer number of voices discussing techniques, sharing vulnerabilities, and celebrating triumphs energized her. Yet she couldn't shake the nagging feeling of being an outsider in a space that felt both welcoming and intimidating. Dedicating her mornings to workshops and evening hours to discussions, Marlene learned quickly. She discovered niche forums and groups that varied from practical skills to artistic philosophies. The advice poured in like unexpected rain, nourishing her previously parched soil of creativity. Marlene's heart raced with an intoxicating mix of hope and anxiety every time she contributed to a discussion thread. Each response, whether supportive or critical, stitched together a tapestry of growth. Despite the warmth of these interactions, insecurities still lingered. What if the wealth of knowledge around her highlighted her failures instead of her potential? Envy danced in the edges of her consciousness, whispering doubts about her skills and choices. The realization that her past experiences were different from those of others threatened to drown her exhilaration. However, she reminded herself that every conversation might serve as a stepping stone to becoming the artist she aspired to be. After a week of active participation, Marlene stumbled upon an initiative that resonated with her vision, a group project centered on crafting stories through shared art. Under the watchful eye of an experienced moderator, the participants would pair up to create pieces that reflected their unique experiences. After reading the detailed descriptions of their intentions, Marlene felt a bolt of clarity wash over her. This was her opportunity to deepen connections, both with others and within herself. The sign-up required a brief personal statement, and as Marlene began to write, words began tumbling out like a cascade, mixing her fears, ambitions, and the aching need for expression. She poured her heart into each sentence, crafting a narrative that felt raw yet liberating. Just as she was about to submit, the specter of doubt loomed, her finger hovering over the send button. What if they don't see value in my story? The thought slithered into her mind, drumming on her insecurities. A lifetime of self-doubt loomed large. With her heart racing, she reminded herself of the conversations she'd had with Lisa about transforming her craft into a form of therapy. Maybe this was her best chance to exercise that very philosophy. Taking a deep breath, Marlene pressed send. An electric current of fear and exhilaration coursed through her as she lurched forward into the unknown. The pairing process began. Anticipation mingled with anxiety. Who would she be paired with? Would they resonate with her artistic vision? Or would there be a clash of style that highlighted her limitations? Days later, Marlene received an email. She was matched with Lynn, a fellow crafter known for her intricate designs and powerful storytelling. A wave of elation washed over Marlene, but it was short-lived as she wondered if she could meet Lynn's pace. Would she thrive in this collaboration or falter under the weight of her insecurities? With her mind swirling with possibilities, cognitive distances stretching between inspiration and fear, Marlene set to work. Would this partnership solidify her place within the crafting community, or would it unravel her? In her heart, the pulsating urge to rise above her limitations excited her, yet threatened to spiral into anxiety at any moment. With a determined gaze, she started preparing to collaborate, each stroke of her brush a declaration of effort and intent. Yet looming on the horizon was the very question that had sparked this journey. What if vulnerability bred rejection instead of connection? The answer awaited her, teetering on the edge of uncertainty. Marlene woke up the next morning feeling a torrent of emotions. The knowledge that she would be collaborating with Lynn shimmered in her mind, creating flickers of hope that battled with her insistent fears. What if she couldn't team-match Lynn's talent? The weight of self-doubt clung to her like a heavy garment. Determined to set the tone for the collaboration, Marlene immersed herself in research about Lynn's previous work. The more she browsed through Lynn's intricate designs, the more her admiration grew. It was clear Lynn's artistry was not just skillful, but deeply insightful. As Marlene absorbed the vibrant colors and intricate patterns, her insecurities flared. Each piece seemed to scream confidence, while she felt hidden beneath a shroud of uncertainty. But instead of succumbing to jealousy, Marlene saw an opportunity. Lynn's artistry could inspire her to explore facets of her creativity that had long slept. She decided to compile a mood board inspired by Lynn's work, a visual representation of the themes that resonated with her: connection, resilience, and the beauty in vulnerability. As her fingers scrolled through images, Marlene began to create a collage that spoke to her heart, a reflection of their coming collaboration. When the day arrived for their first video meeting, the pulse of excitement mixed with anxiety fueled Marlene's surroundings. She straightened her workspace, lighting candles and placing her mood board prominently on the screen for Lynn to see. As the seconds ticked by, the anticipation knotted her stomach. Would Lynn appreciate her efforts, or would she see them merely as amateur? As the screen flickered to life, Lynn's warm smile erased some of Marlene's worries. They exchanged casual pleasantries until Marlene summoned the courage to share her mood board. Watching Lynn's expression transform into curiosity lifted the weight off Marlene's heart. With each image she explained, Marlene felt herself inching closer to confidence. They began to discuss their visions for the project, and to her surprise, Lynn expressed a desire to explore Marlene's ideas fully. Yet, as the conversation deepened, Marlene's old habits crept back in. She became acutely aware of the gaps in her knowledge, her voice wavering as she hesitated over technique and style. In the moments of silence, she could practically hear the whispers of her insecurities. What if I mess this up? The fear was ever palpable. But Lynn's encouragement sparked something in Marlene, rekindling the belief that her story held value. You bring a unique perspective, Lynn said earnestly, and that's what will make our piece powerful. Each time Lynn reaffirmed her contributions, Marlene could feel old cloaks of self-doubt beginning to shed. It was as if their collaboration itself became an act of mutual healing. Realizing that vulnerability didn't equate to weakness, Marlene began to embrace her story openly, sharing the experiences that shaped her. The deeper they delved into artistry, the more integrity Marlene felt in her approach. Each shared vulnerability was a brick laid in the structure of their artistic partnership. However, the looming question remained. Could she truly open up enough to forge a connection that wouldn't crumble under the weight of her fears? Would Lynn's initial acceptance sustain them through their artistic creation? With each passing day, Marlene felt stronger and more inspired. She was on the precipice of transformation, and yet, in the back of her mind surfaced an unsettling thought. What if her attempt at raw honesty led to disconnection, rather than the kinship she yearned for? The answer was waiting just beyond her reach, wrapped in the layers of their unfolding collaboration. Would this project be the platform for authentic self-expression, or a mirror reflecting her darkest fears? The following days were a blurred canvas of creativity and trepidation for Marlene. Each morning, she approached her desk with a blend of eagerness and trepidation, ready to tackle another round of ideas with Lynn. As they exchanged thoughts, the collaboration deepened, but so too did Marlene's internal battles. Ideas flowed more freely, but the shadows of self-doubt would loom, whispering insecurities in the quiet moments between their exchanges. Marlene shifted her focus, attempting to harness the energy of their partnership to confront her fears head-on. She drafted outlines and sketched concepts that excited her, channeling both Lynn's artistry and her own experiences. Yet, the same question rattled around in her mind. Was she contributing enough to elevate their project? One afternoon, Lynn suggested integrating a community element into their work, something interactive that could resonate on a personal level with their audience. Imagine if we could capture the essence of people's stories, Lynn enthused. Marlene's excitement was quickly stifled by the familiar voice of self-doubt. What could she offer to this vision? Would her story truly resonate with anyone? Think about your experiences. Lynn encouraged those moments that define us. They could inspire others. Marlene felt compelled to lean into the challenge, yet the weight of her past, littered with disappointments, threatened to paralyze her. That evening, Marlene took a solitary stroll, reflecting on Lynn's words. The world around her seemed vibrant, yet her thoughts spiraled into darkness. She paused at a park, watching children play, their laughter mixing with the cries of birds overhead. It struck her, then a part of her longed to connect. Every failed attempt at displaying her art, every moment of rejection, those experiences formed a mosaic of vulnerability she had shied away from. With purpose, she returned home and opened a blank document. Instead of drafting a concept, she began to write her story, the raw, unpolished narrative that had formed the foundation of her artistry. Words spilled forth as tears streamed down her cheeks. Marlene detailed her pain, her resilience, and moments of beauty once obscured by shame. This was her authentic self, the unfettered essence she had long kept under wraps. A sense of liberation washed over her, but it was quickly replaced by anxiety. Would Lynn understand her very personal narrative? What if her vulnerability backfired and drove a wedge between them? Still, she knew that displaying her authentic self, her truth, could not only reflect her growth, but also weave an unbreakable bond between her and Lynn. The next day, nervous energy radiated from her as she prepared for their meeting. With her heart racing, she shared the document. "I wrote something," she stated, her voice barely above a whisper, laden with fear. The silence that followed felt eternal. Marlene held her breath, awaiting Lynn's reaction. However, Lynn read on, her gaze steady, absorbing each word. As she finished, her eyes glistened, and a soft smile erupted. "This is beautiful, Marlene. Raw and real. Thank you for sharing your truth." Relief mingled with hope as Marlene absorbed this validation. Yet beneath the praise lay a growing unease. Sharing such honesty changed the trajectory of their collaboration. Marlene had stepped into a realm vulnerable and profound, but could she navigate the repercussions of such connection? What would it mean for their artistry and for herself? The anticipation of their next steps thrummed in the air, charged with potential and uncertainty. A realization started to bud. Opening up could very well unlock pathways she never expected. Yet each step forward invited the looming specter of fear, daring her to confront what lay beyond the horizon of her insecurities. The stakes were suddenly higher. The collaboration had become a mirror reflecting not just her artistry, but her very self. What new heights could they reach together? And would she find the strength to embrace the unknown waiting on the other side? Marlene and Lynn met the following day in a small, sunlit cafe, the air thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Marlene's nerves buzzed in tandem with the chatter of nearby patrons. Today was pivotal not only for their project, but for Marlene's burgeoning self-acceptance. With every word she had shared recently, she felt flickers of personal growth, but also waves of uncertainty crashed relentlessly against that foundation. As they settled into a booth, each with a steaming cup before them, Marlene sensed an anticipation charged with potential. Lynn was flipping through Marlene's document, her fingers tracing the phrases as if they were a roadmap. The full weight of her vulnerabilities lay exposed, thrust into the bright light of scrutiny. "I was thinking," Lynn began, gaze suddenly serious, "about expanding your narrative into an interactive format." Marlene's breath caught for a moment. This idea struck her as both alluring and terrifying. An interactive format? She echoed, her mind racing. Could her life experiences be morphed into something more than just a written story? Would this evolution serve as healing or merely re-expose her scars? Yes. Lynn's enthusiasm emanated like warmth from the coffee. "I envision an installation where people can reflect on their personal stories through writing, art, even dialogue." The thought stirred a tempest of emotions within Marlene. A part of her craved this journey, to create something that could inspire and connect, yet the fear of exposure loomed. What if they don't relate? Or worse, what if they mock it? The familiar shadows danced at the edges of her consciousness. Or what if it resonates deeply with someone? Lynn pressed gently. That's the essence of art, finding threads that bind us even in our fragmented truths. Marlene chewed on Lynn's words, her brain working overtime. What if she sustained that honesty, not just in her writing, but made it tangible? The risk was undeniable, yet so was the opportunity for profound connection. Okay, let us explore this idea. As the weeks unfolded, Marlene transformed. The once quiet artist emerged emboldened, motivated by a growing conviction that her story could not just exist in solitary spaces, but could intermingle with others. Each session with Lynn felt like stepping deeper into her own psyche, every choice reflecting a more robust version of herself. In the studio, Marlene painted with ferocity, colors swirling together as her narrative began to take form. Each brushstroke was not merely pigment on canvas, but a reclaiming of her past. Complexities and contradictions transformed into art. But with the exhilaration came an underlying tension. Diving into the depths of her history mandated a confrontation not just with the past, but with present sentiments of vulnerability as well. "What if I fail?" she confided to Lynn one afternoon. Throughout their creative exchanges, Marlene had shared the brushstrokes of pain and joy alike, yet the possibility of rejection weighed heavily. "Failure is an integral part of growth," Lynn replied, her voice soothing yet firm. "In art, every misstep leads to something more. Therefore, do not define yourself by a single outcome." Marlene curved her lips into a tentative smile. This journey was teaching her resilience, giving her the intellectual and emotional tools to navigate artistic risks. As days morphed into weeks, anticipation turned into anxiety as the project's unveiling drew nearer. The community engagement was set. The thought of sharing not just her art, but her story in a public way frightened and exhilarated her in equal measure. Would they accept her vulnerability? Could her journey inspire others? The day before the event arrived, heavy and charged like the approaching storm. Marlene stood before the mirror, taking in her reflection, vaguely recognizing the woman who faced her. This was the culmination of her growth, her willingness to embrace the unknown, yet the unanswered questions lingered. Heart pounding in her chest, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow will reveal everything." And with that thought firmly nestled in her mind, she knew that whatever awaited her on the other side of the event was beyond her control. In the crucible of the unknown, would she arrive at a breakthrough or shatter under pressure? It was a question that echoed as she drifted into uneasy sleep, the evening laden with the promise of what was to come. Morning light crept through the window, nudging Marlene awake with gentle insistence. Today wasn't just another day. It was the day she would step into a new version of herself. She could still feel the remnants of her dream, a swirl of colors and abstract shapes that echoed the tumult within her. It was a reminder of the catharsis awaiting her. Rising, she prepared herself, not merely physically, but mentally. Each action, the brush of her hair, the tug of her clothes, felt like deliberate gestures towards empowerment. Marlene took a deep breath, focusing on the symphony of her heartbeat, grounding herself before entering the fray. Adorned in a simple yet striking outfit, she represented not just an artist, but a woman ready to embrace her narrative. The setting loomed in her mind, an open canvas awaiting chaotic strokes and heartfelt expressions. When she arrived, Marlene's heart raced, but the moment she stepped into the gallery, the vibrant hues of her paintings snapped those nerves into focus. Each piece was alive, reflecting her journey. They were not mere canvases but beacons of her transformation. Yet the ambient buzz of voices wrapped around her like a tight embrace, filling her head with questions. Had this all been a colossal mistake? The shadows of inadequacy whispered doubts again. Quickly banishing those thoughts, she reminded herself of Lynn's words on the importance of risk-taking as attendees flowed in. She moved through the gallery, noting the mixture of curiosity and contemplation flickering in their eyes. Marlene soon found herself engaged in a conversation that surprised her. A woman standing before one of her paintings posed a question about its origins, her voice steady and sincere. "What does this piece mean to you?" Marlene grappled with the complexity of her own thoughts. Here was her chance. It's a reflection of coming to terms with pain and joy simultaneously. Each color represents a different chapter of my life. She spoke, the words unspooling as they flowed from her heart. With every syllable, she felt a thread weave between her story and that of the audience, connecting them in shared humanity. The woman nodded thoughtfully. "It resonates deeply. I had a similar experience last year." That simple acknowledgement sparked something within Marlene understanding. In that moment, she wasn't just presenting her work. She was inviting others to unravel their narratives. As the event continued, conversations bloomed, branching into unexpected directions. Marlene discovered hidden layers of herself with each exchange, realizing her vulnerability was transforming into strength. She even had the opportunity to meet someone who had been through a similar journey of rediscovery, a painter with whom she could share insights and hopes. However, with newfound connections came a surge of anxiety as the time for her personal speech approached. Standing backstage, she gripped the edges of the podium, her hands trembling. A realization struck her: this wasn't merely about artistic courage, but about laying bare her soul to the world. This encounter was a crucible, testing her avowal and the depth of her transformation. Pausing, she inhaled slowly, letting the warmth of encouragement from the art surrounding her absorb into her bones. "I can do this," she whispered to herself, the mantra building momentum. As she stepped out into the spotlight, her heart hammered, reaching a crescendo of urgency and fear. The moment had come to confront not only her past, but the fear of her own voice. The audience was waiting, and for the first time, she understood their anticipation wasn't just for her art, but for the heart behind it. With that, she opened her mouth to speak, ready to bridge gaps and forge connections with authenticity. What wonders awaited beyond her words, she could hardly imagine. But one thing was clear: the journey had only begun. Marlene realized that with every brushstroke and every word shared, she was rewriting her identity. And just as she felt the heat of the spotlight, the vision of another life, another self, ignited just beyond her reach. What that would look like emerged as a tantalizing question to explore, edging ever closer to the brink of possibility. Marlene stood in front of the audience, her heart racing as she grappled with the energetic hum of anticipation that filled the room. This was the moment she had longed for: a chance not just to showcase her art, but to share the very essence of her journey. The fear of vulnerability had morphed into a steadfast determination. She would no longer allow self-doubt to overshadow her authenticity. As she began to speak, Marlene felt an unfamiliar power coursing through her veins. "Thank you all for being here," she started, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. "Tonight, I'm not just presenting my art, I'm sharing my truth." Each word resonated with clarity, an echo of the commitment she had made to herself. Marlene's narrative unfolded like a vivid tapestry, weaving together experiences of struggle and triumph, loss and rediscovery. With each brush of the past and present, the connection between her story and the audience grew stronger, illuminating the shared human experience. For the first time, Marlene recognized the power of her vulnerability. It wasn't merely an unveiling of her confidence, but a celebration of resilience. She could feel the atmosphere shift as the audience leaned in, captivated. The whispers of self-doubt that had previously plagued her began to dissipate against the backdrop of her authenticity. When she concluded her speech, a wave of applause surged through the room, a physical manifestation of acknowledgement not just for her art, but for the courage she embodied. Validation washed over her in tidal waves, providing undeniable proof that her journey held value beyond her imagination. In the days that followed, the impact of her performance echoed throughout her community, sparking conversations around the themes of connection and healing. Messages poured in from audience members reflecting on their own vulnerabilities and journeys, further reinforcing Marlene's recognition of shared experiences. That Marlene's download of strength transformed her approach to her art. Inspired by the responses she received, she started a series entitled Threads of Truth, a collection of pieces reflecting collective vulnerability and the bonds formed through shared narratives. Art became not just her outlet. It evolved into a vessel for connection. With each piece she crafted, she merged creativity with storytelling, embodying both her journey and the stories of those who had touched her life. Among the creations, a stunning mural blossomed, elements pulled from stories shared with people in her community, allowing them to contribute sections that illustrated their own tales. The moment she unveiled the mural, standing side by side with contributors basking in pride, was a pinnacle of personal triumph. Marlene realized she had successfully turned her act of kindness into something profound, Not only had she transformed her personal struggles into art, but she had catalyzed connections and conversations that bridged individual stories. Now recognized in local exhibitions and online platforms, Marlene stood with her head high, newly established in her craft. Her confidence radiated, and her voice, once a fragile whisper, emanated with clarity and strength. The dark shadows of self-doubt that once danced around her every movement were replaced by solid foundations of self-belief. Ultimately, Marlene didn't just achieve artistic recognition, she accomplished deep personal growth, redefining her identity through the lens of creativity and connection. What once felt like a solitary journey became a vibrant dialogue with her community as she demonstrated how art could transform lives in that light. Marlene became not just a creator, but a beacon for others to find their own voices amid the clamor of self-doubt. The art wasn't her only achievement. It was the way she learned to reclaim herself amidst the chaos and loneliness life can bring. In closing, Marlene stood in front of the audience once again, this time ready to embrace her destiny, brimming with confidence. She proved that anyone, regardless of their starting point, could weave together their past experiences into a narrative worthy of being shared with the world. Live your truth, Marlene thought, relish in the journey, and above all, inspire others along the way. Now, it's your moment. Do not wait even one more second. You need to subscribe now to the channel to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could change your life. Leave a like immediately to support the algorithm that brings these important narratives to light. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Marlene's journey, and share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. It's time to show your support for stories of personal overcoming.